Welcome, everybody, back to the Chill Like a Mother podcast. I am so excited to have Zach here with us. We met, ironically, followed him for a while on Instagram first because I love his content. And then I didn't even know he was a fair play facilitator until we ended up in the September monthly hours that we all get together. So, Zach, can you kind of like lead us in with why you love fair play and why you're creating such amazing content for men and women?
Thank you. So the majority of what I create is educational, short form, 90-second videos trying to educate mostly men that women end up sharing with men about in a better way to divide up domestic labor, which I learned through fair play, as well as just a better understanding and how to differentiate and understand how to wrap your head around what mental load is and what emotional labor is. And I think since I discovered fair play, since I started talking about it, and I realized that as a math teacher, I realized how it took me a while until I started having these like words that I started realizing how much I was doing as a math teacher and how relevant it is to so many relationships out there. And people start resonating with it and they wanted more. So I gave it to them.
Amazing. For anybody who doesn't know, in your words, what is the mental load and invisible labor?
So mental load, I think, is best articulated with examples. Mental load is the thing that keeps you up at night, is the thing that you're still ruminating about. I think a lot of people get mental load confused specifically with domestic labor. I think mental load can be applied to literally anything. It's that that clapping monkey that's in your head all day, all night long with your profession, with the work that needs to get home, that with really anything that you are accountable for, you're responsible for, or you have significant emotional like attachment to the outcome of.
And how does that then play out in the lives of parents or people with young children or even thinking about becoming parents?
So I was trying to calculate the other day the number of comments I've probably read through. I'm probably somewhere between 50 to 100,000 comments that I've combed through over the past 2 years. And I think that what I've seen in them and these podcast episodes and all the mom creators and guy creators that I follow, a lot of women bear the emotional labor of making sure that the child is safe, making sure that the home is a certain way. And they know that society will judge them based on what their home looks like and how their kids come out and the behavior of their kids and the cleanliness and the dressed, how well they're dressed. And I think because of that pressure that society is unjustly put on them instead of both parents, women then carry the brunt of, okay, well, I'm going to get judged for this, so I'm going to put in the effort to make sure that I'm judged well for it and not negatively judged, versus dads just show up to the park and they're like, oh, what a great dad. What do you
Right.
mean he just showed up to the park? That doesn't mean he got them in the car. That doesn't mean that he could have even sat in the passenger seat. You don't even know if he drove there.
Or pack the diaper bag or put
Or
on
the
the right
snacks.
shoes or
Yeah.
water
Or
bottles.
made sure that there were extra diapers in the diaper bag, or made sure that the cream and the wipes were filled up before you went. I think that emotional labor that falls on a lot of women due to the current state of judgment then translates into, okay, so all those things that we just listed are a perfect example, I think, of emotional labor that the parents go through, and that more women are currently bearing than men. So because they're not judged on it, they're not holding on to it, versus I think a lot of men, like their careers, and if they're an entrepreneur like I'm working on becoming, I know that society will be more likely to judge me on how I'm performing financially.
Mm.
And so I think a lot of guys probably hold a lot more mental load around finances. We've seen those tropes of like, hey, honey, let me see your phone. Is there anything you want to hide from me? Oh no, here, check out my phone. Hey, let's open up your Amazon app. Oh no, don't look at
Don't
that.
do that.
And it's because I think a lot of times guys are more financially motivated, again, based on, I think, societal expectations of
Yeah.
what positive masculine performance looks like.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And interesting that you bring this up, because right now in my life, we're going through this kind of like gender role switch, and
Yeah.
I'm working and my partner is unemployed and stay-at-home dad right now.
Mm-hmm.
And the
Love that.
question that I get asked the most often is, has he found a job yet? Is he looking? And how long do you have before he has to work again? Right.
Really?
And it's
I
like,
was gonna get something a little bit different, but it's on the same like realm.
yeah.
Wow.
And so it's the perceived assumption from other people, that's their stories, is that I can't, won't, don't bring in enough to sustain our lifestyle
Mm.
without the predictable income. And so it's a very interesting societal narrative, I think, that we still experience very much as gendered. What are expected of women, what is expected of men.
Yeah, I think it's a consistently elusive problem that
Mhm.
there was this video that went viral. I duetted it on Instagram. It's at like 2 point something million, and the original is at 7 point something on TikTok. And I don't, you've probably seen it somewhere because I've seen it stitched by multiple other people. The guy says, "I don't help my wife."
Oh
He's the
yes.
UPS guy.
Yeah.
Um, I don't help my wife do X, Y, or Z because I do my fatherly duties and I just do X, Y, and Z. It's not help for them. And I thought it was really interesting. And I saw myself also annoyed. So he got on Good Morning America because of
Wow.
that. And Laura Danger and Abby Eckel kind of, and he himself also called out like, there's a problem with our culture. The fact that this got me on Good Morning America, like the fact that
Right.
I don't know if he said it quite like that, but I know that some of the other creators pointed that out is like many of us have described that this, and women have been describing for a long time. This should be the baseline. This
Mhm.
is the baseline. This is what we're expecting. And why is this being celebrated so much?
Mm.
It's less about like us as individuals making
Mm.
changes, but it's like the comments that we put out there. It's the what attention are we going to pay in the comment that we're going to put on the video that's either calling someone out or judging them.
Mm.
It's the people that go to the park and see the guy with his kid saying, "You're a great dad," with no other context other than that they see them in the park.
Mhm.
Those are the small cultural changes that I think we can be slowly influencing one comment at a time, one interaction at a time. And it's saying, being the person in the boardroom, like, wait, why are we having him on our show? Because he talked about what we all expect. Why is this being
Right.
celebrated? Um, and so as much as, I'm trying to push the needle forward with talking about mental load and creating more palatable things for guys to listen to, I think
Yeah.
uh, if you look at TikTok and Instagram, someone called me a thought leader the other day, and it felt really uncomfortable.
Mm.
But my ego was very excited, but like my person was like, "Are we though?" And so I looked up mental load
Mm.
on the search, and it's my face about 100 times, and then it's a bunch of different women, and then like two or three other guys. And
Right.
so I feel what I'm getting to here is I feel bad that I know a lot of guys need to hear it from another guy to
Mhm.
understand it. And I recognize that's just kind of where we're at right now.
Yeah. Two things can be true. That's the reality. And we're moving towards this change, right? Like this differentiation you made between like my person and my ego. Both of those things can be true. You've moved from, or are transitioning from, like creator, thought leader, let's just say it, thought leader, to working with men who are becoming parents or have little children. And so can you walk us through a little bit for the listener, like what does that look like? Because I know a lot of my clients who are women, identify as women, are coming to me with the other side of the story, right? They're coming to me with this is what keeps me up at night. This is how my partner is useless or lazy or blind or whatever words they're using to describe their reality and their perspective and their lived experience with this. They feel the pressure in their bodies, right? And so when you're working with people who identify as male, what are the things that you're enlightening them with? How are you working on the unlearning and the learning and the embodiment of these are the things that your partner is struggling with, and this is how you now step up to the reality of not helping but just doing?
So I'm going to start off with a disappointing note, which is that all the guys that I talk to are already at least a little bit leaned in. Everyone that I talked to, they decided to book the call with me, and I'm talking to them directly because they recognize that their wife has been talking about it for months, and or they've been sharing my videos with them, and like they know something needs to change and they want to make that change, or at least they want to hear about the possibility of making that change with me.
Yeah.
So now we've pointed out the disappointing part, that's the majority that I've worked with. I think one of the questions that I am constantly trying to field, I think I made another video about it. The question is like, how do I start this conversation with him? He's not listening. He's not hearing it. When people are saying they want to share my videos, but not sure how. And funny enough, I had a call the other day where there was this really young couple. She was sharing, she was saying like, yeah, I share videos with him all the time. I was like, have they made any difference? He's like, I don't watch any of them. They're on the call together. And I was like, why not? He's like, she sends me 42 in a day. And I was like, I can't tell if you're lying or not. He's like, I'll pull out my phone. And he pulled up 15 of them from that morning. I think it was like midway through the day. And so what's happening is, I'm not calling this laziness. I'm saying that we want to do what feels easy and maybe passive aggressively send a video that is really calling them out. Some of us know that that's probably not the greatest idea. Here's the recommendation. Yeah. Here's the recommendation I would give is definitely share it and start with some context. Hey, this is a video that I saw today. Reminded me of a conversation we had last week. And I'm seeing from what he's saying here that we could make an adjustment so we're not fighting about stupid stuff all the time. I think if you're putting in a sentence there to contextualize it and not leave them to go to their defensive selves, that's going to be a great way to have them lean in a little bit more. Again, and so the pushback on a lot of people when I say things like this is like, we're already doing all the emotional labor. We're already doing all the mental load. Why are you giving us more shit to do to get this through to their brains? I acknowledge that it's more work for you. And I think there's a positive light on the other side of that specific direct task. So that's where I would start, is share content, start the conversation. I've gotten a couple hundred comments now saying, thank you so much for your videos. These have been great conversation starters. We've been able to learn and like move the needle forward by talking about your videos together. So I'm also working on a book, and it's slowly becoming the sort of the bones for that'll be the textbook of my coaching programs with guys. So I'm looking at my post-it notes over here. So sort of starts with like identifying the problem. Most women have been trying to like bang their head against the wall, trying to get them to understand that. And I think that's some guys are not getting it and they're pushing back and they're defensive. Some guys are getting it and there's something missing in communication. So once they kind of get it, we need to look at why it's important and the urgency behind that, which is like 50% of marriages are getting divorced. So like this is a very real experience that tons of people going through. And I think guys don't realize that. We feel really safe once we get the wedding ring. And I think sometimes it takes something really scary. Alyssa and I were separated back in 2018. Looking back, if I point to emotional labor and mental load were a huge impact. We bought a house. It was my idea to get the house. It was instead of just getting like a nice condo. And I was not upholding my end of the bargain around like getting through that learning curve of figuring out how to work with contractors and getting work done in your house. So a lot of it was falling on her. We were in significant financial strain. It took going through, we were separated for about 90 days. We set some firm expectations around how we wanted to be separated. And then, we came back from that saying like, okay, let's figure things out. But mental load was the reason that we were separated. And I remember a couple weeks ago, Alyssa was realizing, I don't know what article it was, but she had really wanted to share a mental load article with me in 2019. And she's like, I don't know if he's ready to hear it. This is probably going to be noise. I don't know if she ever actually shared it. We tried going back and finding the text to see what it was, but I was one of those husbands at some point that was defensive. I think the urgency existed after that separation. Ideally, that urgency doesn't take a separation or a pending divorce to create that urgency. So I think with a lot of guys in those first discovery calls, I'm trying to be really blunt with them. Like, do you think you'll end up in a divorce in 3 years if you don't improve this? Which is a scary thing to say out loud. It almost feels manipulative when I ask it, but like that's got to be a real truth. Like, you got to create urgency to make those changes.
Yeah.
From there, I think we got to start dismantling toxic masculinity that a lot of us have embedded in us. I still have a lot in me. I don't fully know how to get rid of it all. It's always going to be there, but I think one conversation at a time makes a huge difference. And then from there, starting to define and identify where you're adding mental load and emotional labor for your partner. And lastly, implementation and practice. That's sort of the framework for it all. And I know your question originally was, what does it look like on your side? A lot of what it looks like is the implementation. It's the every week we're having a call saying, how did your Sunday planned expectations meeting go? What got brought up? What was the downfall? What did you argue about? What needs to be repaired? What new expectation are we working on this week? It's a lot of implementation, practice, and adjustment and iteration.
And how do you find those conversations go? Like you said, the disappointing part is that they're already leaned in. People listening right now who maybe resonate that they're identifying some stuff for their partner. What are the next steps? If you could go back to yourself in 2019, what were the words you needed to hear from Alyssa to help you hear it? Because very realistically, there are a lot of people in silent seething, in contemplation of divorce, in thinking, how long can I do this? And so if you could, and if it's too personal, like, feel free to set a boundary with me, but like, what would you have needed to hear from Alyssa then?
Tough question. I don't know if I have an answer for that one. I don't know. Sometimes when you talk with like a teenager around habits or good choices, like, you just kind of know you're going to say it and they're not going to hear it. And they'll hear it when they're 26. They'll hear it when they're 30.
Right. Totally.
They're going to hear it when the lesson is far past. Like, why did no one tell me this when I was 18? Yeah, we fucking told you. Like, you weren't listening. What's sad and concerning is I don't know. I'm sure she was saying things like this.
Right.
I know she was talking about mental load without that word. I know she was talking about emotional labor without that word. So, as I'm saying that, I'm realizing in real time, I think that because the language didn't exist for that then, I couldn't point to it. I couldn't describe it. She wasn't doing a wonderful job articulating. I'm going to pause for a second. I'm going to show you something.
Yeah.
So I was a teacher from 2014 to 2021. And in 2017, I was working at a school and they had this laminating machine. And so we printed out these like I wanted like my own posters. I didn't want those like stupid ones that always see it. Now I recognize it's probably backwards, but this is Jennifer Lawrence. My mother had bought me the flag for women's suffrage to put up in my classroom. And I was a math teacher. So the stats show that about 50 to 51% of women in high school are crushing it in math. And then it drops off significantly when they get to college, just because that's kind of, they either don't feel like, engineering is a choice, or they don't feel like math is like a route they want to go. But the skills are there. It's just society's like messaging to them that changes things. So I'd put up this poster along with the suffrage flag to kind of encourage them that like, no, math is actually for you. You can own this topic too. It might be a male dominated field, but it's not because we dominate it. It's just because you weren't given Legos, you were given dolls as a kid, which cut down on your spatial reasoning. Either way, I had this epiphany the other day. So the quote is, could there still be a lingering habit of trying to express our opinions in a certain way that doesn't offend or scare men? And I thought it was an important quote because she was the highest paid actress in Hollywood at the time. If we were to rephrase that using some of the language that I now know, I would say, so could there still be a lingering habit? Why are we still putting in emotional labor to not offend men? That's the question. Because we deserve it. We shouldn't need this to do this emotional labor anymore. And so I think it's honestly a language barrier, not in the traditional sense that we know it of a different like foreign language, but mental load, emotional labor, domestic labor, invisible labor, decision fatigue. When you start introducing those things into your home, when you start introducing those things into your world so that he can, and this was again the video I got a lot of negative feedback on, when you can start letting him own that word too and not have it be just around domestic labor, but have decision fatigue and mental load be also something that he can associate with his work, he can start understanding and embracing, that feeling of how I need to send a quote to a customer and I need to follow up with IT about this thing. I need to do X, Y, and Z for my colleagues. That's all mental load. And if we can identify that that's mental load, and it's also mental load to set up the appointment for our kid and make sure today I came from getting suppositories from Walgreens because she doesn't take down oral meds, and making sure that those are on deck because she's been running a fever and we were about to run out this morning, making sure there's childcare because we can't bring her to daycare today. When we can start associating the mental load that they're experiencing at work and also start seeing it at home, I think it's just the language introduction into the home that probably would have made a huge difference. And I think, again, I didn't have the language for it, but I think I started taking on emotional labor and mental load of what it was like to have a child during pregnancy by being sober with her. I tried taking on not doing things that I know she couldn't do. So for example, we were about to go on a field trip to Six Flags, and I told her that morning, I was like, hey, Alyssa, I recognize like you wouldn't be able to go on a roller coaster, so I won't be going on them today. Even though I love roller coasters. And in that moment, she's like, no, I need you to go on that roller coaster so that I can live vicariously through you.
Right.
So I think there's a lot of moments where women are saying like, I want to live vicariously through you, please enjoy that. But at the same time, I think because I was doing some of that work, I was purposefully putting mental load on myself to start appreciating what her body changes were going through. It was a not loved series, but I might have to do it again just because some people found it to be absurd, but I have like 17 ideas for what you can do when your partner is pregnant,
right,
to, for lack of a better word, like method act your way into doing some of the emotional labor and mental load that they do.
Right.
So take your favorite fitting pair of clothes, put them in a box, and hide them with the clothes that she won't be able to fit into for however long. Don't eat sushi, don't drink alcohol, don't smoke. If she can't be taking more than ibuprofen or not even taking ibuprofen, also don't do that.
Cold meds, allergy meds, like some of those. For some women, they have to stop taking their ADHD meds, which comes with its own side effects and
no
realities.
more contact sports. Yeah. So something aggressive that I did was I put on a weight vest during that, and I put a sweatshirt on in the heat of New England summer. And I didn't take it off because I know that Alyssa was not able to regulate her temperature the way that she was normally able to. And so I just forced myself to sweat underneath that, because I was like, she doesn't have that control, so I'm gonna force myself to have that control. And like small things would happen, like when I went to take it off, I also had like a little fanny pack with a 5-pound weight in it, and like I couldn't so I'm 6'5", I typically bound upstairs like 3 at a time. I couldn't do that because it would whack me in the that area. And I was like, oh, she probably kind of waddles up one stair at a time. So now I'm going to do that. So I think just improving our awareness, using new language, trying to take new actions to start bearing some of that labor. I know that wasn't quite the question that you had asked, but I think that's my best answer to it.
Yeah. And I actually applaud you in saying, I don't know, after I asked you the hard question of what do you think Alyssa could have said? Because I think there's a lot of power in sitting in I don't know and admitting I don't know, because I think you could have come up with a bullshit answer just to placate me for the podcast to make you sound good, right? But I think there's a lot of power in saying I don't know for both genders, especially because we have a knowledge limb that we can easily access information from, and sitting in uncertainty is actually a skill that I think needs to be practiced again, because we have access to all of the knowledge and all of the scripts and all of the things that we could say or could do or need to be doing.
I guess I'm glad I sat in that I don't know, because I think I kind of came up with probably a new solution, is just pointing out the value of language there. No one's asked that specific question. Like specifically think about the 2019 period, a year before we got pregnant. That probably would have been important. And I think, not to just be like a self-serving, self-peddling content creator, but I think having it come from a man, again, hate to say it, but probably hearing other guys talk about it, and it not feeling like your wife is falling into that naggy bitch wife, like Deborah Barone from Everyone Loves Raymond. I think hearing it from other guys, because we're so used to having the Ray Barone be the person that we're complaining to. Oh yeah, my wife's been on my ass about X, Y, and Z. Versus if you're hearing another guy talk about, like Laura Danger pointed out a really good video the other day from Travis and Jason Kelsey. I don't know if you saw that one, but
no.
Do you know who those people are?
No, I don't.
So Travis Kelsey is Taylor Swift's like current love interest there on the Kansas City Chiefs, and Jason's his brother. They're both NFL players, and they have a podcast together. And Travis was saying to his brother, like, hey, you were at this event, you were in like shorts and sandals. That was odd. Like, really dressed up, bud. And he's like, yeah, my wife was supposed to bring me jeans. And he's like, why didn't Jason bring jeans for Jason? Why was that on his wife? And then he starts going down the answer, and then his brother's like laughing at him, like, you sound like an idiot. And like in that moment, we hear him say, like, yeah, I really can't blame my wife for this one. And Laura pointed out, like, and the commenter that brought Laura to it was like, this is what accountability is going to continue looking like, is having guys with microphones that guys also respect, start having these conversations, because we're so used to hearing it from these like trope TV show comedy places. We're not hearing it from men that we respect.
Yeah. Or
And
like sitting around the break room conversation. Like
yeah,
my wife was really on my ass this weekend to mow the lawn and do the laundry, and don't I just deserve a break, you know?
yeah,
And the other guy goes, well, like, man, you go to the gym like 5 days a week, and I know your wife takes your kids to the swimming lessons, and I know you didn't go out and buy the pink shirt for pink shirt day. Like,
yep,
and I know they were sick last week and your wife took 3 days off and you didn't. Like, again, that person is also partly leaned in, right?
yeah.
Like they're coming from it from a place of that awareness of like, I've been noticing these things in my buddy, in my workmate, in whoever, and I'm actually going to take an opportunity to say like, hey man, I don't know that your perspective is real great on that.
Yeah, I think getting called out by our peers is a huge part of transformation. I think the huge opportunity I had that most guys are not going to have is I had 50,000 mostly moms on TikTok watching my every move,
Right.
holding me to a really high standard, as I was sort of showing my experience on paternity leave. And I learned a ton from combing through those comments and like seeing what the feedback was, as well as my first viral video, realizing like how incapable a lot of people thought a father was for being able to take care of his kid
Yeah.
from 7 p.m. to 3 a.m. during my night shift while we try to get Alyssa asleep.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's also a narrative that hurts everyone. Incapable, incompetent. You couldn't do that, you know, as well as the default of thinking that women are taking care of everything at home.
Last point I'll add to this one, I know I've talked about on a couple of other podcasts, is that I really, being a sales professional, I was grateful to have the guidance and mentorship that last year I was promoted to an account executive role from being a sales development rep. I was a cold caller. I was number one for 2 quarters straight. And the reason I'm saying that out loud is that I made a point to have my kid like on those like team meetings in the morning. I think the beauty that is often lost from COVID was that because remote work became so normal, having kids and dogs show up in your screen was also really normal. And my teammates got to the point where, oh, he went off camera, he's probably changing a diaper. Oh, oh, hi. Like they would say hi to my daughter that couldn't, didn't know what was going on, but they got to see that someone could be like a high performer and be a very pretty involved parent.
Yeah.
So that was my purposeful way of trying to influence some of that culture, is like you can be a totally leaned in father and also crush your number.
Yes, absolutely. And so if people want to connect with you, Zach, where do
Mhm.
they do that? Can you say your Instagram handle and maybe give us
Sure.
some context in terms of what your most recent endeavor is in terms of helping people start these conversations?
Sure. Yeah. So real Zach Think Share, the one I bought the blue check mark for, because my other account got phished. On Instagram and TikTok is Zach Think Share. So I work mostly with guys that are either about to be parents or are newly or have young children, that are looking to make a change. Um, I love working with guys in sales. I can speak a lot of their same language. You can apply for a relationship goals consult. I have both group sessions and one-on-one. I'm a huge fan of the one-on-ones, and I think we're able to dig deep and make huge changes in your life.
I really appreciate you being here with us today. And real quick, I've started this new thing where I want to do like rapid fire questions at the end. And so, really quickly, what is on your bedside table right now?
It is, I didn't sign up for this, by Dr. Tracy D. She also has a podcast.
Yes, she's amazing. What do you do for creative outlet?
That's hard because a lot of it is TikTok. I do try to do some dancing. I have this TikTok account I don't talk about. It's Zach Think Share TOO. It's literally just like when I recognize I need to enjoy life a little bit more, I put some music on and force myself to do a little dancing. And we have woods in our backyard, and I've been working on carving out a path to the pond that's back there that doesn't exist at the moment.
Awesome. What is your favorite song to dance to?
Probably Uptown Funk by Bruno Mars.
What is
Yeah.
your favorite movie?
Oh, first one that flashed to mind is Inception. That or Dark Knight, Batman.
Yeah. What are you going to do this week to reduce the mental load for your partner?
We have Thanksgiving coming up. We're hosting for the first time this year. She bought a ton of boxes of new cups and plates and stuff so we could actually not have to ask people to bring silverware with us. We're going to be having conversations around what expectations I think I currently expect of me around Thanksgiving, and create some really, really solid outline for what the weeks following up to Thanksgiving look like around food, around cleanliness of the house, around what we want things to look like when people arrive, because I know that's going to be a huge source of stress for her. And I know that typically I'm not as leaned in as I think I would like to be. And so I think really fleshing out some of those expectations so that we can be clear on who owns what, who ought to do what.
Yeah. Awesome. That's so good. Thank you so much for being on the podcast today. And I really appreciate everything that you share. And I will be sure to include all of the show notes for anyone who wants to get in touch with you or follow you or download your freebie. I know you have one about conversation starters. And so I will direct them to all of those things.
Awesome. Thank you for having me, Kayla. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.